some of the polls are in on Ted Cruz's shenanigans in the Senate. Of course, he did that 21-hour non-filibuster filibuster just for the hell of it. And people think that it was basically a political stunt. 41% say unnecessary political stunt. 32% say it's a good way to make an important point. It's actually a damn shame that it's even that close. It should be not anywhere near close. It wasn't a real filibuster. If it was, have at it. I think that's how filibuster should work. But it wasn't one. So he just did it literally to raise money and raise his profile. Couldn't be clearer political grandstanding. Well, 69% of Republicans loved it nonetheless. They say Ted Cruz's 21-hour speech was a good way to make an important point. And mission accomplished for Ted Cruz. That's exactly who he wanted to appeal to, I should say. And in fact, among extreme or very conservative people, he did even better than he did among general Republicans or conservatives. We covered that for you last week. Now, when asked about all this, though, to what effect? In the end, the American people are not any more in favor of his position than they were before. So yes, you've got the primary Republican voters all riled up to vote for you in 2016. Well played politically, but as a matter of policy, will it make any difference? And actually, David Gregory asked them that question.
What you've gone out and said is, let's kill the law altogether. Let's defund it.
Actually, with respect, David, I think the premise of your question is wrong. It is the Democrats who have taken the absolutist position. I've engaged. I'd like to repeal every word of the law. But that wasn't my position even in this fight. My position in this fight was we should defund it, which is different from repeal. And even now, what the House of Representatives has done is a step removed from defunding. It's delaying it. Now, that's the essence of a compromise. On the other side, what have the Democrats compromised on? Nothing. Zero.
Anytime that Ted Cruz tells you, with respect, he's about to say something incredibly obnoxious, smug, and offensive on purpose, and that means total disrespect. So he's saying this case, David Gregory, well, you're obviously wrong about everything. And let me tell you something. The Democrats have taken the absolute position that we should follow the law. Should we really? Or should we vote for the 44th time on the same effing issue? And no, I'm not for repealing it. I'm for defunding it so it has absolutely no money and cannot be implemented. You see, that's very different indeed. So after I've taken this insane position, well, I mean, the Democrats won't even negotiate on not applying the law for a year. Some nonsense so-called compromise I came up with on an issue that didn't exist before I made a big, to-do about all of this, right? So, look, I can do the same thing. I'm like, you know what? That's it. Those goddamn Ronald Reagan tax cuts. Defund the whole government until we get our way and taxes are put back up to 70%. That's what they were when Reagan came into office. They were 70% for the highest tax bracket. Well, unless you do that, nope, sorry, we're not going to fund the government at all. David, with all due respect, this is all the Republicans' fault. If they would just compromise and put taxes at 69%, well then, we could make a deal here and fund the government. But they're taking an absolutist position on not rolling back the Ronald Reagan tax cuts. So I'm sorry, I guess it's their fault for defunding the government. Anybody can play this game. He thinks he's so clever. All right, here's more from this obnoxious ass.
You make this argument as if there's no broader context here. Obamacare has been legislated, it has been adjudicated, and it has been tested to the political system. And so let's go through that. We had an election where I heard the standard bearer of the Republican Party, Mitt Romney, say Obamacare should be repealed. All the Republicans already voted against this thing when it was ultimately passed. The Supreme Court upheld it. And then this summer, you and your colleagues said, look, let's have a strategy here of defunding Obamacare. And you had people who signed a letter, and they said they joined you in that fight. Well, here you are now. You don't even have the same number of folks who signed the letter who voted with you in this effort. There are not protests in the streets arguing to do away with this law in the way that you'd like. Again, 56% in one poll this week, New York Times, CBS said, let's uphold the law. So I'm focusing on results, your goal and results. Where have you moved anything?
Okay, look, the facts are becoming more and more clear that Obamacare isn't working. Every day that's becoming more clear. There's a reason the unions are jumping ship, one union after another.
You're making an argument. I asked you a specific question based on the facts on the ground. You've made all these arguments. My goodness, you went and spoke for 21 hours to make these arguments. You haven't moved anyone.
Oh, look, the American people overwhelmingly reject Obama.
They got a funny way of showing it if they overwhelmingly reject Obamacare by continuing to elect Obama. So, look, David Gregory with a rare good job here holding his feet to the fire, and Ted Cruz can't show at all that the American people are on his side. They're not on his side based on the polls on Ted Cruz. They're not on his side based on polls on this particular strategy. They're also not on his side in the elections when they reelected the Democratic president who passed the Affordable Care Act, let alone the people who implemented it in the first place, also chosen by the American people. So Ted Cruz has no line for that. He has no answer for that. Then finally, Gregory also challenged them on the Nazi analogy that he made during his speech. And of course, first he will deny it. Let's watch.
Do you regret comparing the future of Obamacare to the rise of Hitler and Nazi Germany?
Well, the premise of your question isn't true. I didn't make that comparison. What I said is that there have been many voices in Washington who've said, we can't do this, we can't do this, we can't do this. And I went through the centuries where over and over again, when facing big challenges, Americans have risen to the occasion, whether it was the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, World War II, whether it was going to the moon under John F. Kennedy, or whether it was winning the Cold War. At every stage, there were voices of conventional wisdom who say this can't be done. And at every stage, the American people rose to the occasion. And what I said is we should do the same.
Really? So you didn't mention the Germans, and you were just making a broad point. That's funny because we kind of have you on tape talking about the Germans.
If you go to the 1940s, Nazi Germany. Look, we saw in Britain Neville Chamberlain, who told the British people, accept the Nazis. Yes, they'll dominate the continent of Europe, but that's not our problem. Let's appease them. Why? Because it can't be done. We can't possibly stand against them. And in America, there were voices that listened to that. I suspect those same pundits who say it can't be done, if it had been in the 1940s, we would have been listening to them. Then they would have made television. They would have gotten beyond carrier pigeons and beyond letters, and they would have been on TV, and they would have been saying, you cannot defeat the Germans.
It sounded a lot like he said Nazis and Germans there. And then when questioned about it, with all due respect, I disagree with the premise of your question. You can disagree all you like, my friend. But there's this thing we've created. It's called the video. It captures what you say, and then we can play it back later. So you can defend your argument that you compared him to the Nazis and the Germans. And actually, I don't really care about his analogy that much. People like to get offended by that type of stuff. But he's basically saying, don't do appeasement. We can do anything we like. I understand the analogy. But to say you didn't make the analogy is totally wrong. In fact, it borders on being a lie.